Welcome to the Chapter 10 lecture. In this lecture, we'll explore the concept of community and its deep impact on both personal identity and ethical behavior. We often think of ourselves as autonomous individuals, but our roles in various communities, whether familial, social, or professional, are what truly define us. This lecture will challenge the idea of self sufficiency and look at how community influences our decisions, moral values, and the way we interact with others. As discussed in the previous lecture, Western culture often celebrates individualism, however, it can have unintended consequences. Social theorists like Michael Walzner argue that an overemphasis on personal freedom and social reliance erodes the social bonds that tie us together. As a result, we may feel increasingly isolated, even as we are presented with more ways to connect virtually. It's essential to consider the role of community in both personal well being and moral decision making. The idea of community is central to ethical life. The African philosophy of Ubuntu reminds us that our identity is defined in relation to others. I am because of others. Western philosophers like John Dewey also argue that our moral decisions are deeply rooted in the communities we belong to. Without recognizing this, we risk making ethical choices that are purely self serving, disconnected from the broader social context. In media and communication, there is often tension between individual goals and the broader responsibility to serve the community. Whether in journalism, public relations, or advertising, media practitioners must navigate these conflicts. A truly ethical approach requires recognizing the importance of community service, even when it challenges other professional values like independence or profitability. Media, as a powerful tool, can either foster a sense of connection or contribute to social fragmentation. In the field of advertising, marketers often target vulnerable groups like children or young adults for the purpose of selling products. From a Kantian perspective, this exploitation is morally wrong as it treats individuals as means to an end. Advertisers must recognize their responsibility not only to their clients, but also to the broader community. Ethical advertising prioritizes community well being and avoids exploiting individuals for mere financial gain. Aristotle's view on community is distinct in that he saw community not as a harmonious utopia, but as a dynamic space shaped by both cooperation and conflict. For Aristotle, differences among individuals are what make community truly meaningful. Eliminating these differences in pursuit of peace would destroy the very essence of community. It is this balance of unity and tension that creates a space for personal and collective growth. In media ethics, individualism can often overshadow community concerns. Media practitioners, whether in advertising, journalism, or PR, may prioritize individual rights or financial interests, overlooking their responsibilities to the broader community. Ethical decision making, however, requires a balance between personal freedoms and the collective well being. We must always consider the social context in which we operate, recognizing that ethical decisions affect both individuals and communities. In understanding community as an ethical concept, Aristotle and Kant play pivotal roles. Aristotle described humans as both communal and political creatures. His idea of koinonia, which refers to all types of social groups, helps us define what community truly is. While Aristotle emphasized everyday interactions, thinkers like Kant argued that community is not just a choice, it's a foundation of ethical action and reality itself. Importantly, Aristotle distinguishes between community and communion, suggesting that a true community doesn't require a loss of individual identity, unlike a communion where such a loss occurs. Aristotle's notion of koinonia shows us that community is not confined to one specific type of relationship or duration. It can range from short term interactions, like business deals, to long lasting ones, like shared religious traditions. Whether it's a family, a political regime, or even a business contract, the essence of community is found in the common elements that bind people together. But it's important to note that community for Aristotle is not an ideal state of perfect unity. It's a structural feature that exists in the very fabric of our social interactions. Isocrates, a contemporary of Aristotle, took a different approach to community, focusing on unification rather than adversarial rhetoric. His concept of a rhetoric of unification emphasized collaboration, dialogue, and mutual understanding over winning arguments. Isocrates believed that true success in persuasion comes not from defeating opponents, but from creating consensus and working toward the public good. His ideas are foundational in public relations ethics, where the goal is not just to persuade, but to foster healthy, symmetrical communication that values listening and compromise. Isocrates' approach to rhetoric is deeply ethical. He argued that the integrity of the speaker was more important than the brilliance of the speech itself. He famously said that words are more persuasive when spoken by someone of good repute. In other words, the moral character of the communicator is what gives their words weight. This shift from focusing solely on the art of persuasion to the moral character behind it marks a significant transformation of rhetoric into ethics. It's not just about convincing others, it's about doing so with integrity and trustworthiness. Importantly, political ads can help us understand Isocrates' approach. Now, attack ads in political campaigns are a double edged sword. On the one hand, negative ads are attention grabbing and can generate media coverage. They are also effective at mobilizing a political candidate's base. However, the long term impact can be detrimental. Critics argue that negative ads contribute to voter cynicism and a decline in political civility. Such ads might win elections in the short term, but they can also discourage voter participation and undermine the public's trust in the political process. Drawing from Isocrates, we understand that true community engagement is not just about pretending that everyone agrees or creating artificial harmony. Healthy communities sometimes experience conflict, and that's okay. Rather than focusing on isolated events or individual actions, we should be concerned with understanding broader patterns and interdependencies that shape our world. For journalists and public relations practitioners, this means spending more time cultivating meaningful, lasting engagement with audiences rather than focusing on momentary surface level consensus. Communitarian theory challenges the Western model that places individual rights at the center of moral and political thinking. Communitarians argue that we cannot fully understand the self without recognizing the role of community in shaping our identities. They emphasize the interconnectedness of individuals and communities, suggesting that moral identity is not independent but deeply rooted in our social ties. The communitarian approach calls us to reconsider how we balance individual autonomy with the common good, reminding us that our identity and ethical responsibilities are intertwined with the communities to which we belong. Imperatively, communitarian thinkers critique the Western focus on individual autonomy, calling it a delusional ideal that ignores the reality of interdependence. By emphasizing individual rights above all else, we risk neglecting our social responsibilities and weakening the fabric of community. Communitarianism offers a corrective, calling for a balance between individual freedom and the collective good. It insists that moral duties are not just about protecting individual rights, but also about recognizing our obligations to the communities that shape us. In the broader context of media ethics, communitarianism challenges the individualistic bias that often prevails in news reporting. Media outlets should not just focus on sensational stories or individual achievements, but instead, they should promote collective responsibility and advocate for social justice. A communitarian approach to journalism means looking beyond the individual to understand the broader social impact of the stories we tell. It's about prioritizing the common good over personal or corporate interests. In contrast, feminist theory positions community as a moral priority. Feminists critique individualism, which they argue uphold a masculine and capitalist worldview, often neglecting values like empathy, care, and collaboration. By focusing on relationships and social connections, feminism challenges traditional models of rationality and autonomy, offering a more inclusive vision for society. Furthermore, feminist ethics argue that the individual's moral value is rooted in the web of relationships they inhabit. Instead of prioritizing abstract rationality, feminist theorists like Nell Noddins suggest that care should be central to our understanding of morality. Conversely, American philosopher John Dewey linked the idea of community to participatory democracy. Dewey believed that democracy is not just a political system, but a way of life, where active engagement from all individuals is necessary for both personal and collective growth. Through education and communication, society uncovers the common good, and this shared experience leads to the development of each individual. Essentially, Dewey's thoughts on democracy are extended to the media. He criticized the elitist view of media figures like Walter Lippmann, who saw journalists as conveyors of expert knowledge rather than facilitators of public participation. Dewey's vision called for media that fostered civic engagement, creating a public sphere where citizens could actively participate and shape the common good. Public journalism emerged as a response to Dewey's call for a more engaged media. This form of journalism seeks to revive civic engagement by facilitating dialogue between the media and the public. However, it has sparked debate over whether it crosses the line into activism. While some see it as a necessary part of responsible reporting, others fear it undermines journalistic objectivity. One notable example of public journalism is the Akron Beacon Journal's A Question of Color series, which explored race relations in Akron, Ohio, after the 1992 LA riots. The newspaper went beyond traditional reporting, actively promoting community dialogue and even creating a nonprofit to sponsor events. However, this raised important ethical questions about the role of journalism. Can journalists engage in activism, or should they maintain impartiality? Another example of community engagement gone awry involves corporate social media strategies. Lowe's faced a backlash when it pulled its support for a television show featuring Muslim Americans after conservative groups lobbied against it. The Lowe's Hates Muslims hashtag quickly gained traction, showing how companies can face intense criticism on social media. This case raises ethical questions about the role of companies in engaging in controversial issues. Now, Habermas introduced the concept of the public sphere, which is a space for free and open debate where citizens engage in rational critical discourse. Media play a crucial role in maintaining this space by promoting communicative action. However, Nancy Fraser critiques this ideal by arguing that the public sphere is often exclusionary and dominated by powerful interests. Instead, she advocates for recognizing a multiplicity of publics that can negotiate their power relations. Despite its ideal form, the public sphere is often undermined by the commercial media system. Habermas distinguishes between strategic action, where media manipulates public opinion for commercial or political gain, and the communicative action, where the aim is mutual understanding. In today's market driven media landscape, this communicative action is often sidelined, limiting the public sphere's ability to engage all voices equally. It's important to understand that journalists face a complex ethical dilemma when trying to balance their duty to serve the public good with maintaining journalistic objectivity. The rise of consumerism in the media industry complicates this, as audiences increasingly see themselves as consumers rather than engaged citizens. Journalists must therefore navigate these tensions while ensuring they foster civic engagement and serve the needs of diverse and fragmented communities. As PR professionals, understanding the concept of community is essential. It's not just about managing relationships, but fostering a sense of connection that brings people together. The term community encompasses social identity, shared values, and collaboration. Theorists like Stark and Wilson argue that PR's central mission should be cultivating and maintaining a community spirit. It's about creating lasting, meaningful connections between organizations and their audiences. At the same time, Wilson and Culbertson advocate for a communitarian approach to corporate communication. This framework emphasizes interdependence between business and their communities. It's not just about financial gain, it's about contributing to the common good. Effective public relations work under this framework should focus on building relationships that benefit both the organization and the wider community. Now, the ethical foundations of community driven PR can be traced back to Dewey and Benabib. Dewey emphasized communication that serves the public good, while Benabib focused on care for others as central to ethical practices. Now, over time, a number of models have been put forward. One of these models is a symmetrical model, which emphasizes dialogue over persuasion. The idea is to create a two-way relationship where both the organization and the public can influence each other. This model is based on mutual benefit rather than one sided advocacy. It promotes ethical practice by encouraging both sides to listen and adapt, fostering a more balanced and collaborative communicative process. In contrast, the asymmetrical communication model focuses on persuading publics to accept the organization's perspective, often without considering their interests. Critics argue that this model reinforces power imbalances and undermines ethical communication by disregarding the needs of stakeholders. While it may be effective for organizational goals, it does not lead to mutually beneficial relationships. Now, advertising, like PR, has an ethical obligation to respect community values. The advertising industry stresses principles like honesty and fairness and must remain responsible to its audiences. Ethical issues arise when advertisers target vulnerable groups like children with messaging that exploit their inexperience and undermine their interests, as seen in the case of junk food advertising contributing to the obesity epidemic. Now, the rise of the internet has changed our concept of community. People can now connect globally, creating communities of interest that transcend physical boundaries. However, this increased connectivity comes with challenges. Online platforms often create echo chambers. These are enclosed spaces where individuals only hear views that align with their own. Now, the rise of the internet has changed our concept of community. People can now connect globally, creating communities of interest that transcend physical boundaries. However, this increased connectivity comes with challenges. Online platforms often create echo chambers, and this fragmentation can hinder the ability to understand shared interests and experiences. This poses a threat to a cohesive public discourse. At the same time, with the rise of social media and citizen journalism, anyone can contribute to the news cycle. This has democratized information and bypassed traditional gatekeepers like news organizations. However, this shift poses ethical challenges, particularly around credibility. Without editorial oversight, how do we ensure that information shared by non professionals is accurate and responsible? The key here is balancing empowerment with accountability. All right, that is the end of the chapter 10 lecture. Thank you all for reviewing the lecture. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll catch you all next week.